We're turning our attention to Syria, where activists say government tanks stormed into the city of Hama early Sunday. Residents there reportedly tried to block the regime's forces. We're joined now on the phone by Awa Damon, who is monitoring the situation there in nearby Beirut, Lebanon. And Awa, we're talking about tanks firing rounds for every minute or so, cutting off electricity as well as water. It does seem to be a fairly major offensive.
It most certainly would appear to be that way, John, and according to a number of activists and local residents, this military offensive began at around 4 o'clock in the morning, with activists saying that the tanks began shelling indiscriminately. People naturally at that hour would have been sleeping. Hundreds of them said to have taken to the streets, at which point Syrian security forces indiscriminately opened fire on them. There are at least at this point 45 people who have been killed in Hama. That's according to London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Great concerns, of course, that the death toll is going to rise in that particular city. A similar, but what would appear to be smaller scale offensive also happening in neighboring Deir ez-Zor, where there 13 people have been killed so far. Interestingly, though, according to some residents in one part of Hama, when the tanks began moving in, they did not open fire. Reportedly, they were speaking with residents. They appeared to have negotiated some sort of a deal, but naturally a very different scene in other parts of that flashpoint city. Video out of Hama for hours appeared to show a plume of smoke on top of the city, gunfire ringing out as well, John.
And Awa, explain the timing here, because Ramadan is coming up. So how might that explain the intensity of this crackdown and the calculation which has been going on, I guess, with the Syrian regime?
Well, John, a number of activists have been saying that during the month of Ramadan, they were planning on having daily massive demonstrations, similar to those that we have been seeing taking place on Fridays. This because once people break the fast, they then go to the mosque. It's a gathering point, and the activists, the opposition, have been using mosques as their gathering point to then launch their demonstrations. And so they were most definitely planning, the opposition was, on really taking this uprising to the next level in terms of the scale, scope, and frequency with which they were going to be heading out into the streets. Hama and Deir ez-Zor over the last few weeks have been the two areas where we have been seeing the largest demonstrations taking place on Friday. So this could be seen as a sign, a signal, a warning from the Syrian regime to the opposition that they do have the capability to go in militarily. They will not hesitate to use it, especially if in these two areas and throughout the country, demonstrators continue to take to the streets in these massive numbers.